So I'm starting now. So thank you everybody for coming. Most of you have seen the slide deck, how we matured from backend functions as a service guys that were gluing other people's APIs and managed services. We felt like kids playing with Lego pieces. Into people who were giving superpowers to front-end developers, regardless whether they are voice first or React or front-end developers, like some of you here, or UX folks. I also observed that over the years we became friends with product managers, and we meshed with them really well because we got obsessed with building MVPs and building startups faster. So helping businesses create MVPs, and the focus was not on the output but on the outcome. And every month I would recommend a book. Like last couple of months I'm recommending the book from Twilio founder Jeff, Ask Your Developer. And I keep asking you to share these books and materials to your executives, because changes in IT unfortunately happen mostly from the top. So as you put all these three things together, we realized that overlap is agility, because serverless enable us to get to products faster. So it's a serverless mindset now that we're talking about, serverless being new agile. And yet, after 3+ years talking about serverless, we observe there is this disconnect between IT and what business really needs. So being IT guys myself, we are often guilty of being like car mechanics who just like to pimp the cars and keep them in the garage. But the goal of the business is to drive the cars. So this mindset is really allowing us to shift the focus from infrastructure and the code and pimping our cars to driving the business around. And so I started thinking like how to help companies accelerate beyond asking you to ask your managers to read books like these at our meetups. Another problem happened with COVID. Like COVID brought really lots of uncertainty to IT, or to the world in IT as well. Yes, most of you still have the jobs, but everybody I talk to works longer hours. Many of you had to go through the pay cuts, or take both pay cuts and work longer hours. And it's taking you longer to find work. And if you're a contractor, your gigs are getting shorter and shorter. But on the flip side, like these meetups that enable people from all around the world to come to us, enable you to take remote jobs. And I started thinking that we can start turning this community into consultancy, starting helping one another in the future. So the idea would be to keep bringing the topics like we are bringing today that are more relevant, more business focused. So how we can help those businesses we are trying to help with technology, but not just for the sake of technology shake. And then start offering consulting services. Many of you are consultants. I know John is, I am, and many of you here as well could take an extra contract on a side. And also, if you're a full-timer, like we can help you matchmake with the people who need passionate and knowledgeable cloud experts. So I'm thinking like employees are as well suffering to find the good cloud pros, and they know if people are from this group, they're going to get one. So we're going to give them priority access. I created this form. Normally we have forms for the Manning Raffle. So this form is the same one, just expanded a little bit because I would like your feedback before we start running with the idea globally. So how to help businesses propel in the cloud with what we already do. And I put this Manning slide because the link before, it will be in the chat when I finish, will help you get the Manning Raffle. They've been with us almost 3 years. Lots of things we learned from Manning Publishing, and I can highly recommend them. So they're still giving, it's either video or the live course or the book product. And in order to show, to walk the talk, the meetups we are scheduling for this year are more business focused. So you will see the switch from serverless generalist to serverless data engineering. So the next talk in May is going to be Joe Emison. He's serverless superstar. Guy started 5 companies in 3 years, pure serverless mindset. He decided to go big with insurance company. It's a showcase of how beautifully you can use Amazon AWS stack to build a serverless business. But then when he needed reporting, he decided to use BigQuery, and instead of going for the Redshift, and then he used the company Fivetran to move the data from DynamoDB into the BigQuery for reporting. And so in May, he's going to come explain what he did and why he did it, what were pros and cons of both options. And he also connected me with his movers, Fivetran folks, and their engineers will be here to help explain you how you can move your on-premise stuff to any cloud or move data from one cloud to another. So I'm excited for that meetup. Then looking at kind of putting the data and computers to use, like life sciences with COVID is becoming a big hit. And there is nobody like Lynn Langit. She's focusing on bioinformatics from 2017. She's a she's a hero for all three clouds, Azure, AWS, and Google Developer Expert. So she's going to explain her journey, how she did data lake, how she builds data lakes using Azure for bioinformatics use cases. And then if there is an interest, we're going to bring her to cover other clouds as well in the future. I started talking to Snowflake guys. They coined the term data cloud, and their business is skyrocketing these years. It's not firmed up. It looks like it may be in June. And like, I have a surprise for you, like Luck is head of Google Data Analytics team. Because if you're going to the cloud for data lakes, you're not just moving your data warehouse so you can have your old reports over there. And yes, you can have your real-time reporting in the cloud. But the beauty of the cloud, that amount of data you will have is give you predictive analytics. And Luck is the best to describe that. He wrote a book of MLOps design patterns for O'Reilly. So with him, it's going to be either last week of July when he gets back from vacation, or sometime in August. So it has to be firmed up. And I would ask you to please rate our meetups, and that will bring more like-minded folks like yourself to our group. And I also need volunteers to talk, like this is my architecture style talks. That's exactly what we're going to see next with Sudeep. So I'm excited to have Sudeep to share his journey, like first scary journey, and then the learnings, how he's bringing his startups. And you can go now immediately to this website and download his startup, what it is about. And Sudeep, thank you so much for coming. Please take it away. I'll stop presenting.
Sure. Hello to everyone, and I don't know if people are just from Toronto or all over the world, but if you are, then thank you for staying up late or joining early. And thank you, Daniel, for hosting and reaching out to me. My name is Sudeep. I'm going to present soon. But before starting, I had never imagined that I'll be giving a talk on cloud, because I was probably the last person to know about cloud. I never worked with it. I only knew like a little bit about it, but during the course of time, I realized that I need to learn a lot about cloud. This is not a sponsored talk. I'm not promoting anything. I'm only sharing my experience, and hopefully people like you and others will find it useful and not make the mistakes that we did. Okay. So from here, I'm going to start presenting. There will be two talks. I've broken down the presentation into two chunks. The first one is what we did, and the second one is going to be what I learned, and hopefully that helps. Can you guys see my screen? Can someone say yes? Just say.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So this presentation, I made it live at this link. So I'll hold here for 5 seconds. You can just copy this link or just type it out, and you can access the slides directly. I'm a fast reader, and I usually get bored when people are presenting, so this might help you. I'll wait for 5 more seconds. 1, 2, and here we go. Okay, so the title of the presentation is how to use cloud without losing sleep and money. Money is important, but what's more important is sleep. When this happened with me, I was pretty new to all of this whole world, and it actually kept me from sleeping for several days, and I was pretty stressed out. I didn't know anyone that I could talk to about this. I didn't know that communities like this exist, so it was quite stressful. This is a little bit about me. So I'm based out of Bay Area. I'm originally from India, and I joined Google. I worked at Google in different products and different parts of the company for about 7 years. None of them was cloud. I did work in payments where Google takes money, but that was totally different. In 2019, I quit Google and I started Milky Way Inc., which is an umbrella company, and I wanted to test and iterate a lot of ideas. And that's what the company is doing. Like, we are iterating, we are launching products, and we're mastering the process of creating something new. And Announce is a product of Milky Way. I'm based in Bay Area, but right now I'm in Mexico. And so I'm also in EST time zone, so it's convenient. And you can, if you have any questions, you can always message me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or you can message me at milkyway.com. Okay, so I will jump on to, I don't know how many of you have read the blog post, but I'll quickly explain what happened. I highly recommend going through the blog post because it's going to be more informative, and I try to keep it like trimmed, but also shared what I went through personally, given that I had no idea about all of this. So I won't go to the blog post, but you can access them over here and there. But I will go through a TLDR. So earlier in 2020, I started working on Announce, and the idea came when one of my friend's car got towed away at my own apartment, and we ended up paying $450 to get it back. And I asked my manager that why did the car get towed away, and she said there's just no way for her to announce to everyone in this area. And so there were like a couple of such scenarios, and also oftentimes I would go out and I would be like, oh, let's do something tonight. And I would be scraping the web for events, but I could never really find something that's close by because I would go find something and then I'll go back to Google Maps. And then I realized that it's too far or it's too close or something else is going on. So I built Announce, and I'll quickly show you what Announce looks like. So it's currently in Mexico. So this is Announce. Let's go to Toronto. So the whole idea is that you can find out what's happening in a specific area, and people can make posts in a particular area, in a very specific area. So this is Toronto right now. And over here you see local news because there aren't many local actual users, organic users in Toronto. That's my guess. But we fed it with news so people don't see an empty, a completely empty platform. But users can actually go on to create. So say there's a serverless meeting going on, and you can actually post something somewhere. If there's a local event happening, such and such, you can make it public, and you can mark an expiration date. And what expiration date means is that it no longer will be available to public. So say the serverless meeting happens on April 5th, then it's no longer useful to have that content online. And you can just hit announce. I'm going to keep it unlisted. And you can, so this is now over here. Now I marked it private, and that's why it won't show over here. But if it was public, you can actually see it as they scroll the map over here. So this is Announce. It has had its own journey. In the beginning, what I had thought was that I will create a MVP and then power it with some sort of some data, because when people came here, the first complaint they said was there's nothing. So there's no content. So I said, okay, what if we actually do something like events? What if we could automatically import events and do something like that? And then they came the idea of having server of scraping the web. Right? Now scraping the web is doable. The only question is how do you do it? And we already had deployed a lot of things on servers. So Announce has multiple servers running. But I thought, okay, let's experiment with serverless because it's so easy. We can be really quick, and we can populate the content really fast. So I learned about Cloud Run at this point. This is in March last year. And for those of you who are on Amazon, I think it's closer to Elastic Kubernetes service. So I'll just give a quick brief of what Cloud Run is. So Kubernetes is where you can manage your clusters, and Cloud Run does that automatically. And I think similarly, Elastic Kubernetes service does the same. So it manages number of instances and stuff like that really, really quickly. So a team which is very small, say 1 or 2 people, and you don't want to invest all your time doing this, you can easily use Cloud Run. They also have a free quota, so it's amazing. Whereas Kubernetes has a cost because you are using them, you are taking it. So it makes less sense to have Kubernetes if there's no traffic, but if there's a little bit, Cloud Run is perfect. I've always had a fail-fast approach. So if you put me in a cockpit and you say, hey, try to learn with this to fly a plane, and if there's a red button, I'm going to press that. It's just the way I learn is not by listening or talking. I just learn by experimenting really fast. It just turned out that Cloud Run, experimenting with Cloud Run so fast or in cloud in general, is not a good idea because cloud is very powerful. It doesn't have a limit. if you have your own server at your own computer, like on home or office, it has a limit. It has a bandwidth. It has a number of connections it can have. But cloud can scale rapidly to whatever number. So this screenshot tells how many Firestore reads we did. So this is like 116 billion Firestore reads that we did. It took me very long to understand what we did wrong after the whole thing happened. And actually many days to discover what exactly went wrong and like deep diving into each one of them. And we did over 16,000 hours of billing for Cloud Run. But the cost of Cloud Run is much less. The cost of Firebase is very high. Now, Firebase, if you haven't used it, it's like a containerized platform where people or where developers can can create applications and ship them on web, iOS, and Android really fast. Now, it helps for smaller teams incredibly. It's an amazing, amazing platform. It does have one caveat. The caveat is there's no limit. They don't have a limit. And the reason for that is because it's real time. So Firebase gives many options. One of them is Firestore, which is a database. And the selling point is that the data reads and writes are real time. By real time, I mean, there's some delay, say 50 or 100 milliseconds. But because of this, they cannot put a cap, which is understandable. Because if they put a cap and there's another check, that wouldn't make Firestore readable. So there's a this is what has caused Firestore to be like good, but also not so good in some cases. So I'll just go through what we actually did. I was trying to build a scraper, and I thought, okay, how can we do it on Cloud Run? The problem with Cloud Run is that each instance has a life. So the maximum life I learned was around 9 or 10 minutes, which means that the instance will run, and if the request is not done, it will exit. So I thought, okay, why, as a hack, why don't we do this? Why don't we trigger one instance and let it run for 1 minute or 30 seconds, and it would trigger the other instance? So there's a recursion going on. So say, for example, I'm building Google search as a scraper, and I go to one URL, and then I find all the URLs in that place, and then I use that and distribute it to 1,000 instances, and each instance will do it, scrape that web page, and then follow up. So it's actually a very clever idea. I haven't read this anywhere. I couldn't find anything like this online, at least at the time. So I thought very happy that, oh, wow, I found a way how to use Cloud Run to scrape the web, and it's going to be cheap because it's probably free and we are just testing, so let's just do it. There were many mistakes in this. One was algorithmic mistake. There's no breakpoint here. But I thought that we are going to run it for 5 minutes and then we'll just close it. So what's the worst we can do? We also took a free project. So the project had no billing enabled. So we were like, okay, what's the worst case? We'll just hit all the quotas and we'll not be charged anything. Another thing that we thought back then was that this will help us if we experiment it, and if it gets working, then we can improve the algorithm. That was again a major drawback in our thinking. In cloud, that's not the right way. The last mistake we did in this case was that we took the default parameters. I had very little idea about Cloud Run. I understood what is conceptually, that is dropping the compute time to milliseconds, but I didn't understand how they scale and what all would go behind to make a service like this. And because of all of this, we just took whatever the default values were, and back then there were 1,000 instances with a concurrency of 80. So if you think of it, that becomes 80 times 1,000, 80,000 requests it can handle at the same time, which is very powerful. Because if each request takes only 200, 300 milliseconds, you can just multiply that, like 240,000 requests like per second. That's insane. Anyway, so because the instances scale so rapidly, there are a couple of things that GCP automatically upgraded our billing account. So that was a clear shocker. I had no idea that would happen. There was another problem was that there's GCP node in general has something called as background process. And this is in their deployments in setup. I don't know if it is true for AWS as well, but I would highly recommend going through, if you're doing something like this, go through AWS or Azure or whatever you're using. So the things went into background process. So I turned off everything, I shut down, and I saw that there's no traffic, there's nothing going on, but it was actually running in the background. And it ran for many, many, many hours. We didn't get any notification. There was nothing. I saw everything and I was like, okay, everything is fine. We tested, it didn't work. Okay, cool. Another day went by. And it is after that day that I started getting some billing alerts. So there was a huge delay, around 2 days. Right? So there was no way for me to find out that something went wrong unless I was very aware of cloud platforms. After this, I was very stressed out. It was I was running into a weekend, and I read everything on that weekend, everything that was there in terms of conditions, all the online experiences. There was no experience about a bill like 72,000. I think the largest I read was 20 or 30,000, and those people were actually generating revenue, so I think they were able to pay it off. We didn't have any credits, so I didn't even know about any major credits other than the free ones. So there was no escape there either. It took around 10 days, and GCP did let us go, except they charged us like $150 because of the logging volume. Another interesting thing that they even charge for logs. I would never even think of it as a developer, but they do. And so they're like things to mitigate all of this. And but we didn't know any of that in the beginning. I am constantly speaking, so if any of you have questions at any point, you can just stop me here, and I'll be happy to respond. Okay.
Yeah, hi Sudeep, this is Vijay.
Yeah.
So how did you come to know about the background processes? Was that like via log, or is that like something that you had to really follow up or dig into with the Google folks?
So actually, I sadly I didn't take a screenshot. I will talk a little bit about this. So what most of these platforms have is a monitoring service. So I learned about it, and then I started digging, and this was a lot of things to process for me at that time. So and a lot of learning. So I learned about it, and then after a few days, I explored monitoring service in itself. Takes a lot of time to understand because it's not so easy. It's not like setting up a dashboard. It's pretty complicated because you have to know what proto they have, what are the services, what do they want to call themselves. So once I learned that, I saw the time duration for this project. So you can actually see in those services, one of the metrics is the compute time, and it shows you how long it took. So I know for a fact that I ran something only once. Right? But then how did it run? Like when I looked at it, it ran for several hours, even though there was a timeout limit of 15 minutes, whatever, it should have died, but it kept running. And that told me that, okay, this is the reason why this happened. Okay. And if you read a little bit about this, I actually, at the same time, I posted a question on Stack Overflow, like, why is like the call is taking forever, and cold start, Cloud Run is supposed to have a cold start, and I said a cold start doesn't make sense because it's taking very long for almost all of my code to run. Even though if I want to just console log, and the reason was it was going to background process. GCP says this in their best practices link, so I highly recommend if you're using a cloud service provider, definitely use whatever best practices they have. Any other questions?
Thanks.
Hi, Sudeep. I have a question. Can you elaborate on about how the back and forth was like with GCP? Obviously, seeing that sort of high bill with that kind of process was like, trying to first tell them it was not your fault.
Yeah, so actually, in the beginning, I didn't really understand everything, and I thought everything was my fault. And I was pretty set back, and I was like, I just started doing something on my own, and I do this. So how am I even going to run? And my company is completely bootstrapped. We have no revenue. At that time, I had no revenue. It's still bootstrapped. And it might appear that I worked at Google for 7 years. I might have connections. It just doesn't work like that. Google is completely meritocracy based, and there's some government that if you have connections, some things can happen. I essentially had 0 connections in cloud. I couldn't even talk to anyone. But even if I could, because I was also in many teams, and even if people reached out to me, I would just do whatever is right. Because Google as a company, they're big and they want to do the right thing. So they can't take it's not like a government or some organization which is more people oriented. It is completely like, what is it? It's for everyone. So I reached out to them through their regular channel. So I messaged them, I emailed them. I first wrote a doc, actually. I didn't directly email them. I first wrote a doc, and I wrote down whatever is going on, whatever I could find. I wrote them on chat, and I was like, hey, this is going on. And they said, okay, you probably need to write an email because it's not a small bug that they could help me with on chat. So the next thing I did was I wrote down a doc over the whole weekend. It was a long doc, and I wrote down, honestly, all the mistakes we did. And I was very clear about it, that this is what we did. And then I wrote a doc, like the next part was what Google did wrong. And me as a first-time user, I have no idea that the billing can scale so rapidly. And in the blog post, I mentioned a lot of things what Google did wrong. And I basically listed all of them down. And at the end, I said that if you, if this doesn't go through, I'll have to close the book and close the shop because it's a company and just file for bankruptcy. I don't know if they cared much about that part, but they definitely cared about what the user experience was. Almost all my communication was through email, and they didn't know who I was. I don't think so. Maybe they looked up. I had not published anything. I had 0 connections. So communication was fairly direct and courteous. All of it was through email. Some engineers in Google randomly, because it's a cloud infrastructure team which is completely dispersed throughout the web, I started getting emails from random engineers at Google that, oh, something is probably messed up in your service. You should take a look, because those people were finding logs. But by the time things had already happened, they were late. Anything else?
Actually, I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Sure.
Go ahead.
My question is related to your experience with Cloud Run and Firebase. You mentioned it was your first time using it. I imagine there's probably a lot more technology to use for the first time. Any tips you can give to developers about preventing that kind of mistake? You mentioned about setting parameters, using default. Anything you would do step by step when using a new technology not to see the same results, the high billing, the high volume?
Yeah, so I will go through all of them next. And after this, I realized that I made a lot of mistakes, but I also learned a lot. And my learning throughout has been exponential, to be honest. But because I was freaked out, to be honest, I was pretty freaked out. So everything I did, I wanted to be really good at it. Like if I'm hosting an app, I want to be very sure that there's no data leak or the security is good. So that actually slowed down the development, mostly because I was going through tons and tons of pages and web like documentation, Stack Overflow. So go through all the things that anybody who's new, or even if they are experienced, they should still keep these things in mind, because it's easy to slip. So say Daniel says, hey, let's just set a website for the serverless, right? The blog that I posted, for example, was hosted on Firebase hosting. When I wrote the blog, it actually went viral, and we got a lot of people visiting the blog from US, Canada, India, but also from countries like Russia, China. It was translated in many languages. And what happened at that time was that the Firebase hosting, this article is about how to be careful, but the blog itself was incurring too much cost, because Firebase has a pay, it's expensive, hosting. Can I stop presenting? Oh, sorry. So you can see my face. Okay, that makes sense. So Firebase itself has hosting, which is awesome. I really love it. But if you are expecting a lot of traffic, you should know a lot about hosting. What are the best ways? So you can put things behind the CDN or services that are cheaper. I have some suggestions I'll share at the end. And I migrated our blog from Firebase hosting after publishing it. Within 2 days, I changed everything and hosted it on GitHub pages. And so these are the things that architecture is very, very important. Building an application is very difficult. It's not easy. You need to know a lot of things. But hosting in itself is a challenge, and you should anticipate a lot of things. Even if there's a 1% chance, you should know that. So I'll go through almost all of them in details, but thank you for asking this question. Anything else? Anyone else wants to ask?
We're going to have a Q&A at the end, so feel free.
So I'll just, the next part is actually the learnings. So I just posted a screenshot. If you build an application ground up and you don't have a lot of resources like a big company, a lot of things go behind it. Starting from this lock icon, which is HTTPS, to the UI, to the costs, and each one of them takes a lot of work. So I would just want to take time and say, I appreciate whatever you do. I don't know what application you're making, but it's a lot of work. So after this, I wrote a blog post about how to use cloud and sleep well. A lot of people started reaching out to me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and random places, emails that we are doing this. Is it fine? And what can we do? And I said, okay, let me just write a post about it. So the actual post is on, I created a personal blog. It didn't make much sense to put it on the company blog. So you can access it there. I'll quickly go through all of them one by one. So the first thing I recommend is always use multiple forms of payments. It doesn't matter what cloud provider you're using. You're using your DigitalOcean, that's like an interesting one. If you're using Google, always make sure that your production one is not the same credit card or form of payment as your development one. So in this case, for example, the mistake happened in the development environment, but I had the same card in all of like all the projects. I had separate projects. But I was using the same the form of payment, and this actually red flagged many things in GCP, and one of them was billing, and they actually turned off all the projects that we had. So the development froze completely. We were not live yet, but you can imagine if our application was live, it would just stop serving all of a sudden out of nowhere because they had blocked the credit card. It also makes sense because in credit cards you can put a billing cap. So you can say that the development one should never be $5 and a production one maybe 1,500, depending on what traffic you're expecting, maybe 50% more than that. So definitely and always use multiple forms of payments. Another interesting thing is I talked to a lawyer after this this thing happened, and he said only one thing. The first thing was he didn't understand anything, and he was a lawyer in the Bay Area. It's just a very complicated space. But one thing he said was that you did a good job was doing it under a corporation or a company name. Now, it doesn't matter which country you are, setting up a company today is much easier. And if you're doing something that you think will grow, I highly recommend setting up a company just for this purpose, because whatever personal liability like you have towards your own thing versus a company that just creates a split so you can keep your assets safe. Okay, the second one is set up service quotas. So I learned about this later, and every service, most services have service quotas. This is true in Google GCP, and this is true for AWS, and I believe it's true for Azure as well. So you can specify what is the, how much do you expect? So there's over here, there's something called as, 7 days peak, and it tells you the current usage, and you can limit most of them by daily usage. So say you have Cloud Run instances, I don't expect more than 10 instances, so let me just put a cap. The budget is 10 instances. Or
are you sharing your screen?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot this time. Thank you. Daniel, you should say this.
I typed it, but you gave the link. Everybody has the link, guys. You can multitask.
Oh, okay. Daniel is like accepting his multitasking. So this was the first one, multiple forms of payments. This was the link. It's just my first name, last name.com/guide to cloud. Okay. So this is the one which is service quotas I was talking about. So GCP has this. For most APIs, they have a service quota. For example, they have a Cloud Vision API. Say you want to detect that there's no adult content that people are uploading on your site. So for this, you can have an API, but it also has a cost. So you can limit, say, 1,000, 500, or whatever. Problem is that it's not there for everything. So as I explained in the beginning, Firestore doesn't have a quota, simply because if they had a quota, it will not be real time. So they had to, like, they both have pros and cons, and I think the Firebase team decided to have that like high availability over over convenience. But whatever product, whatever service you use, always make sure to look if there's a service quota for it first, and first put it really, really low. Another good example here is I used the example of Cloud Vision. So they have GCP, they have an example on their site where they are saying that as soon as, like, there's a serverless function that you can build, that as soon as a user uploads an image, check where, create a thumbnail of it. Right? Now, this in itself can be a recursion, because the serverless function, one serverless function will create a thumbnail, and then unless you have a breakpoint, it can trigger again, and that will be just infinite checking and creating thumbnails, creating like, and that would trigger another recursion of checking for adults, like cloud vision, and you're like, it would just be beyond. And you don't really have to like build something great. You're just testing something locally that would just hit a recursion on cloud. And we did this, but thankfully we had put a quota, because I was testing it. I put a quota of 10 and it was reached just after using once. And I was like, what happened? And so the reason for that was this. The next one I want to talk about is cloud monitoring. And every platform has this. In fact, these platforms do like even import this metrics from other platforms. So while billing is delayed by at least 3 days, I think monitoring, the metrics are delayed by 5 minutes. And that's amazing, because if I knew about this in the beginning, I would first set up a monitoring graph. I will look at it, and then I will start any new service. And that's how I do things today. So this is a spike, and like if you open the GCP's monitoring and AWS has its own, they're pretty complicated and very difficult. But the easier way to understand it is that you just take the service you care about, you just set up a graph, and then all you have to do is every once in a while, every day or second day, just look for spikes. So this spike is not correct. What happened here? Like unless one like this much usage is required for only 1 day, sure, it's great. But if I'm not expecting it, then why did this happen? Right. So always take the time to explain spikes, and you're only looking for spikes, and always do this. This is another one, is like whenever you're doing something, I think everyone over here is like serverless architecture. Always spend time predicting costs and make it like a fun activity. And now, like I've done this so many times. Every look at an app, and I can tell that how much is it going to cost to just serve this web page. Maybe it's free, maybe it's $10, maybe it's like nothing. And this is also a good interviewing question. So like, how much does one Google search cost? Right? And you can answer that multi-part. You can say, oh, they have an advertising team, they have a whole engineering team, and they pay Bay Area. But you can also just focus on the infrastructure part, which is how much computational resources go in just Google search, one search. And that's like, you can get a lot of metrics online, and you can come up with some assumptions. So whatever you're doing, just predict costs for it before actually deploying it. This is my favorite one, which is CI/CD. When I started like doing this, I'm pretty hacky in many ways. I didn't really know a lot of ways to do CI/CD. For those, some of you which may not know what CI/CD is, it's essentially deploying automatically. So I do something and I don't deploy it. I don't integrate, I don't deploy. It happens automatically. And I really like this this photo. And what this photo is doing is there are 5 people who are given a task to move a cube. But this one person takes the time to make the cube round. And it will take him time to make it round in the beginning, and all of them will be ahead. But eventually he will be ahead, simply because this person spent time in doing this. So code, when you push code, how long does it take to push it to production? And can you automate that process? This is very useful because say there are 3 people working on the team, and you're pushing code, and some of those require keys. Now, if you push the code, the keys in GitHub or whatever code repository you're using, those keys will live there forever. So that is not a right way. But if you do CI/CD, you can actually do many things. For example, you can encrypt the key. These platforms have many options, like you can have a secret, you can have encrypted keys, you can have many other options. So always use CID if you're deploying something. In dev environment, you can deploy yourself, but anything that's production grade should almost always use CI/CD. The next one is free projects. So this is another one. Most of these actually provide free projects. So Firebase actually has a free project. So this is the answer to the question I was asked just now. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Even if you're hosting like a blog, it would make sense to have 2 versions of it. One could be dev and one could be production. And they're like in GitHub, for example, GitHub Actions is just based. It takes 5 seconds, maybe 1 minute to set up a GitHub action, and give a very big free quota. So there's no reason not to use it. But doesn't matter what application you're making, you should definitely have environments. And they should be development, staging, and production for sure. In some cases, it's not possible because you're just one person doing everything. Maybe there's a team of 7 people. But if there's a team, they should definitely have 3. At minimum, you should have 2. And always this development one should be for free. So Firebase actually has a cost. The problem in our case was it was on a free project, but it had billing enabled. So how GCP and Firebase integrated, GCP bought Firebase and they integrated this product into their own company and they somehow fit it. And my understanding is that how when they fit it, there's some checks and it's still improving. If there's a billing and like credit card at the back end, it automatically upgrades. It's because of how GCP operates and they're trying to integrate Firebase into this machinery. Now, what happens is if you use a Firebase project which is free and completely isolated, doesn't have any billing enabled, and then you use it with production or staging backends or services. So in GCP, for example, you can run many things which are not on the same project. So you can give accesses between projects. One project has billing, other one does not have billing. And the one that has billing does all the things. And if you mess up the free one, which has a Firestore quota, it will get exhausted, but that's okay, right? So always use free projects and use multiple environments. You only have to do this once. It doesn't matter if you're creating 1 app, 10 apps, 50 apps. But if you learn how to do it once, you can always do it again and again and repeat it. In general, I think this is a great practice. It doesn't matter if you're using Firebase or if you're using some other service. So multi-cloud, like this is a big topic. As I learn a lot about it, more and more people say that, oh, we are multi-cloud. Why are you even using single cloud? And my response to that is that it's great to be multi-cloud. If you're like many people over here are probably multi-cloud and you have understanding of multiple clouds. But if you don't have the time, or if you're doing too many things, if you're also writing a lot of code for front end and back end and hiring and marketing and designing, multi-cloud is not really a great idea because each product, each platform has their own, each one of them have their own vocabulary. So for example, Cloud Run, and then Amazon has Elastic Kubernetes service, and Azure has something else. And they all call these parameters different, and their pricing is different. So the more like clouds you jump into, the more difficult it becomes. Also, going back to the monitoring, then you have to import metrics, look at multiple metrics. So if you have limited time, just master one cloud. And to be honest, I'm pretty agnostic at this point. All of them are great, and engineers from one cloud service definitely jump to other one. So, and they're all competitive. So I think that all clouds are great. They all have their pros and cons, and they match. But what's most important is that whatever you end up choosing, be the master in it. Don't be like, I know only 50% of this service or platform and 40% of that. It's better to know 90% of one platform. Keys, this goes back to the CI/CD one and the GitHub secret keys getting pushed into commit history. And that's a big fear. Never do that. Always protect the keys. And the way you can do that, there are many, many services, whatever you're using. Spend some time in it and always do this. And most accesses don't actually require keys. Because most of them require tokens. If you're using cloud service to invoke and to deploy, then you don't really need a token or a key. Like the best practice is to never generate a key. They always say protect these keys, just don't create them in the first place. But if you have to, then use the asymmetric or some sort of key encryption that during the cloud build, only the deployment has it, nobody else. And this is just like where all you need to do it, like for permissions, for deployment keys, for access tokens, for code repositories, like even GitHub has a secret key token. Just don't generate it, or if you generate it, just always like encrypt it. And the last one is actually billing budget alerts notification. I think I missed the number here. 7 jumped to 10. I have, oh, this is wrong numbering. Sorry about that. There's one more, which is best practices. And that is, before you use a particular service, always search in Google for the best practices for that service. And for example, for Cloud Run, had I done this, Cloud Run itself has a big page dedicated, and they only point out 3 or 4 things. And they say, always make sure of this. And one of them is background processes. And the last one is, of course, billing budget alerts and notification. Now, this is the number 10th in my list. This is the least important, whereas most of these cloud platforms say this is the number 1. The reason is, if you're only relying on this and billing is 3 days delayed, then by the time you actually get notified of this, a lot of things would have already happened. So this is more like if you're expecting your billing to be $10 and you got to $20, this can help, or this can help. Okay, things are fine, but don't just rely on them. Definitely have them, but don't just rely on these. So there you go. That was the talk. This is the link to the talk, this presentation. I will try to keep it open. I just want to go through the content once again, and I'll just keep it open so you can visit it anytime. I do highly recommend the blog post I shared over here. I write seldom. Whenever I get time, I have a lot of posts in draft, and I hope one day I'll be able to write them. And so this one explains each one of them, the ones we discussed, in a better font, I think. Okay, I'm gonna stop presenting now, and
thank you.
we can open for Q&A if you guys have.
Wow, this was awesome. Scary experience. Thank you for sharing. Lots of learnings. So, feel free, guys. Now Q&A starts, and I'll post the links again for the survey for the book. And thank you. We have until 8, but like if there are no more questions, we can give the free mining product and part away in half an hour, I guess.
Yes. Murtaza, did I answer your question with the one that you had asked in the beginning?
Yeah, actually did. Actually, got some insight.
Awesome. Okay. Please go ahead. Anyone else? Somebody was saying something.
So my question is, when you sent them the email in which you mentioned your own faults also and their faults, like when they have a billing automatically upgraded, that was not part of the contract when you signed up, right? So did they not respond at any time, even if you didn't call them in the mail? They did not pay any attention to this problem and solve it for you?
So Firestore, actually, it's a very complicated product. If you think of it, they want to manage high availability, high convenience, and cheap price at the same time. And it's a triangle. It's very difficult to do something like this. So Google Cloud is completely aware of this, and it's I think it's tens of thousands of engineers in there, so it's pretty big. When I shared this document with them, actually a couple of engineers requested access because I restricted access with some, and I had to ask, because it had billing details. So many people on the team reached out and asked for permissions and access. How things work within Google is they will be a team and they will sit down. They're all smart people trying to do good things, and they'll go through objectively. And I think in this case also they did. They just don't want to share a lot of their inner things with somebody outside.
It's not required to share that. It's
so
the contract of signing up did not include all these things that happened. So they
no, actually, one of the things that I highlighted over there was that GCP in their contract, not in the contract, but in the terms of conditions, the first, if there has been no deduction in the past, then GCP automatically bills the credit card at $100. In this case, the first billing request they made was for $7,000. It simply happened because it scaled rapidly. The moment I read that line, I was very confident that, okay, now I was relieved. So it was much clearer to me that, okay, now it's not just my fault. It's like they're saying on their website that if they haven't charged for $100, how can they charge for 72 or 7,000? So these are the things, these are loopholes on their side as well. I'm sure they've been trying to close some of them, but think of it from their point of view. It's maybe this sort of things is not such a common occurrence that they haven't prioritized it, or maybe they have by now. I just haven't gone through every.
No, but this loophole should work in your favor. That if you haven't charged 100 before, Did they cancel the charges or not at the end?
They did, yeah. So they removed. It was a one-time gesture, and they removed the charges, but they charged me for the logging because it was somehow unrelated to all of this, and I paid for the logging, which was $170, something like that. So they did take it off.
All right.
There were like at least 5-6 points on my side that I felt that this is a major like issue, and even if we were to like, I don't know if they would go to court, like they have a lot of lawyers, right? But I thought that even if they did, like these are some solid points from our own side.
So I think your script triggered some background processes which did not shut down when your script ended. So those, there should be some way of automation that you can trigger, like, kill all my background processes. And there is probably no such thing. You have to build it yourself, is that right?
Yeah, ideally, I don't know what that service would look like. Actually, my script didn't trigger a service. It was a service, right? But it just went to background process and it just keeps running. I think the
background daemon processes will not end unless they are killed.
Yeah.
Some shutdown script has to run, which will find and kill all these processes.
Yeah. But now
I wonder in a serverless world, like just redeploying, would it kill everything and then redeploy like all the containers and like the entire stack from scratch? It does in AWS. I'm not sure GCP has that.
I think it would do the same in GCP as well. It's basically you just route all the traffic and resources from old container to a new one, so it would make sense.
So if it's a Firebase problem, then Firebase will behave similarly even in AWS and Azure, do you think?
Can you repeat the question, please?
If we use Firebase in the context of AWS or Azure, Microsoft Azure, will it cause similar problem there also?
Well, as I said, if you use a free project and it doesn't have billing enabled, then it will not. It has a free quota, daily quota, which is pretty generous. If you hit that, then the quota will just expire. It doesn't matter what service you're using. And you can download a key from Firebase and use it in Azure, and so you can just access the project like that. So no, like you can completely. In this case, if you use Azure and Firebase, I think you're pretty set. It will not trigger something like this.
Okay. People should just combine this search, Google search, say, I'm using Azure with Firebase, and what are the best practices, and especially about the background processes. And
yeah, but
they'll find enough solution, right?
If you want to move to production, at some point you will have to enable billing, right? So right. Don't think just from a development point of view. Think like what would happen when you have 1 million users. So
you said you hosted some of your blogs through GitHub. So there you didn't have such billing problem, right?
No, so GitHub actually has that's a completely different topic. But Firebase hosting also provides hosting, okay, and they have a free quota for that as well. When I posted my blog, I think we got 100,000 hits on one day. Now at that scale, when you get 100,000 hits on a day, the cost of the serving increased. GitHub is the only provider which serves blog for free, given that it's not for marketing and advertisement. They have like a company policy. But GitHub pages are for free. So anyone can host anything anywhere, and it's amazing. But we were incurred like $100 a day simply because we were getting a lot of traffic. At 100,000 traffic per day, sites can earn a lot of money. The sites that generate that sort of traffic, they can, even with one ad, they can make a lot of money. So sites that have revenue, it's not really a big problem to host on Firebase. But in my case, it was just like, okay, this is an FYI, it's a free, like I'm trying to help people by sharing this, or like I'm just conveying information. I'm not advertising or monetizing this in any way. So GitHub Pages makes more sense, and we migrated completely. But I didn't anticipate that it would be $100 bill just for hosting a blog. One blog post will cost me $100 per day, right?
Yeah, I guess in the two cases, the difference would be that in one case you can do a lot of marketing and SEO to bring traffic to your web page, whereas in GitHub you probably cannot do that, right? It's just like search for it, they should find that information.
Exactly, it's not for ad generating. So for our use case, it was perfect, right? It's a company blog or a personal blog, you can host it on GitHub. My personal blog is hosted on GitHub. I'm a big fan of GitHub Pages. And as I said, GitHub Actions is amazing. One more recommendation I have is like, when you're thinking of what the service is, so say if today I'm making TikTok, for example, I decide to make TikTok, and I can totally do it on all the platforms, but I will not use GCP, Azure, or AWS, simply because all these platforms have a very expensive bandwidth outgoing. So it's not just storage. Storage is expensive, and also the bandwidth is very expensive. So if you go through their building metrics, they all are pretty like 80%, 10% up and down margin there. But what I do recommend is, say, DigitalOcean. So DigitalOcean has a very cheap video bandwidth billing payment. So that is probably the only advantage they have. They also have like nodes and many other things, but you can compare them with the like GCP and the 10% up and down.
Sudeep, are you talking about cost of egress traffic outside from the vendor?
Yes, I'm talking about egress. Yes.
I
From
see.
the server.
And then, but does DigitalOcean have serverless offering, or it's like purely like the?
No, so they have like multiple options, and I think you have to go native or something. As the serverless offering that they have is comparable to Firebase, and that's pretty much the same as Firebase.
Mhm.
So the cost is comparable.
I see.
But to store data, like you can run cloud functions, you can run, you can do anything. But just to store data, I would probably use DigitalOcean.
So I heard a similar story, but you should fact check it, that the Dropbox has moved to Oracle because of 10 times cheaper egress traffic. So
DigitalOcean?
From I don't know wherever Dropbox was before they adopted Oracle Cloud, because it's much cheaper egress traffic.
I totally believe it, and it makes sense as well. But DigitalOcean is by far the cheapest right now. Another
What is the ratio? What would be the ratio of cost between DigitalOcean, Oracle Cloud, and
it's like 1/100 or something? But you can double check. Last I checked, I haven't really thought of creating video app. I was just thinking like this is expensive. But you can, it's like a few clicks on the web. You can just.
Has anybody else in here on the forum have any pricing shocks? Like I got once like over 300 bill, but it's incomparable. And because I procrastinate, I spin up instances, forget to finish the project. So, any other stories?
Yeah, that's a bad one.
You cannot procrastinate in the cloud. You have to finish.
Yeah, I can add one. I think this is Raj. And this is for large corporations. So first of all, thanks for sharing this great insights. The point which you make is very good about the single cloud versus hybrid. Hybrids makes more sense for large organizations which has tens and thousands of employees, and they have expertise and they want to use different things. Then it may make sense, but of startups and smaller mid-sized companies, this makes more sense to just be on one cloud. And my past experience being in a very, very multi-billion-dollar organization, when I was working over there, huge cost bills, mostly in AWS side of this. And I personally, being an architect over there, was assigned a project to really do analysis to save cost and what else can we do. And you'll be surprised the kind of all the decisions and points and touch points I did. I was able to give a report which was like, end of the day, if we do all these things, this is going to save the company $250 million every year. So big organizations, because of the size and because of the volumes they do, really pay a lot. What I did after that, I just went out and created a company called cloudopti.com, a SaaS-based platform just to do that. So Sudeep, you may also want to check that out. I just posted that link. So we are a Google partner. We got approved by Google as authorized product integration for GCP right now. And we are right now looking for people, if you all are interested, to sign up for private free pilot companies. We're just creating case studies. So all these learnings, and I mean, it's very complicated. Google is very supportive, actually. AWS is also. They forego one-time surprises if you're really genuine. But there are so many services, right? Then that becomes very, very complicated to handle. And that's why they're doing their best effort, actually. They're really putting out best practices, as Sudeep pointed out, but it's just so many things to do. And that's why we are trying to simplify to this cloudopti.com. So if anybody wanted to check it out or contact us, just reach out.
I'm trying to follow. Like, is it bill optimization? What do you do? Bill optimization, cost saving analysis of
the cloud. So we take data from your different sources, your cloud billing, your usage, and several other best practices, credits, and all those which we can apply. We have written APIs back to them. which pull data on a regular basis. We do forecasting,
I see.
anomaly detection, all of that, so that it can be proactively done and sent to you in an email like, oh, next month, please expect you're going to get so much bill. So proactively trying to build all this into a system. And I would love to connect with you, Sudeep. Maybe we can work together, and your inputs are great. I think that can be sometimes embedded into such platforms.
Sure. Sure. It's fascinating because this is a big problem, and some other people also reached out to me about like they're also trying to build like some interesting solution, and I think these are really fascinating. In newcomers, like somebody who doesn't have the time, they can definitely use it. And me personally, I've just spent so much time in cloud. You could wake me up in the middle of the night, and I would be able to answer most of the questions. Like if you say, "Oh, there's a spike in this," I can say this happened. Just check this, right? But I'm sure that newcomers or people who don't have this much time and they're trying to do too much can definitely use something like this.
But my prediction for the future is like the same way you had systems engineers before, now DevOps engineers. You're going to have cost engineers. Cost optimization is going to become a discipline by itself once everything is in the cloud. So I see. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, if I may add, I think, Daniel, if actually literally we have created on our page a role called Cloud Optimizer, literally a new role, which I think you're absolutely onto something, and that's something, not only the cost, I think what we look also for performance optimization, security, and even compliance, all of those different aspects. It's just not just one part of it. Cloud is so complicated. So we are trying to simplify. So to just take your point and simplify for newbies and kind of be as simple as possible kind of a thing. So don't want to go too much into that, but if anybody has interest,
Hey, Daniel.
Yes, Harold.
I mean, at a large organization like where you are, I know you have a very large software asset management team, which would augment a cost engineering type of team, right? I mean, I would think that the engineers doing the technical work, it'd be nice if, assuming you have that kind of scale in terms of an enterprise organization, you know, I shouldn't have to worry about that, I think, because I worked where you used to work. In fact, I was on the Weston Loblaw Enterprise Agreement. It was a software asset management team which looked after things like this.
So now we're not talking about big companies, but if we are, the problem.
No, I get it. That's why I said at scale.
I like that. I have opinion there. The problem with big companies, they run project mindset, not product mindsets. Well, once the project is over, it's expensive, and then they get upset so much that they leave the vendor for somebody else. So there is no constant monitoring. Like they treat us as the roofers to build something, and we go, and then they suffer instead of gardeners to constantly improve the thing that they have. And
listen. I mean, I know one of the larger enterprise agreements that you guys operate under. We spent like 6 months, a whole team, truing up both on-prem and cloud infrastructure. 6 months, whole team across all those companies.
That's a lot. One thought over there is so I can share one experience from Google. So inside Google, how do people share, like how? So say somebody's working in cloud and the other person is working on Gmail, right? So Gmail is a free service offering, and cloud is like infrastructure, and these functions and roles are so different that one person, they all know the programming language, but the ecosystems are completely different. And so the performance metrics are usually marked down to like revenue numbers. It's easier to say I made or my work saved the company this much XXX dollars. So all this the operations engineering or whatever, they all bring it down to dollar value. And say in the case of operations, and you're optimizing the code, right? Not just dollars. So Raj said optimization. And that becomes, you can compare that to how many hours an engineer spends. So if an engineer is 20% faster, but you're maybe made 10 engineers 20% faster, that's like 2 engineers, right? So you basically saved two engineers' time. And you can then compare that to dollar value and so on. So most of the promotions or just like value evals happen based on the performance, and everybody just comes down to dollar value at the end of the day.
That's cool. You know, like unexpected, not related to the problem at hand, but when you were describing how they were triaging your problem to do what's right for the world because they're such a big company. That is an unusual way to describe the company philosophy. It reminds me of the religious people almost, like look into your heart, look into the God, and you will know the answer. It's so simple. It's not because I know you, not because I know your father, your good family. It's what's right in your heart. That's amazing compliment to the company.
The thing with engineers is if something is like logically makes sense, they will you can unite engineers no matter where they are, right? So it's mostly like logic based. That if it's a good logic, then yes, let's do it. And if it's not, then not. The point over here is interesting. Is what if I was using a really small company's services, right? A bill like that can like Google as Amazon, they can easily let go of 72K. But imagine a startup and their entire funding is like maybe 3 million. And and if they have if they have to forego amounts like that, it's probably not going to be possible for them. So in this case, I feel more confident to use bigger cloud. For newcomers, like you have to learn, but it also gives you some levy, right? But not the other way around.
Cool. Any other question, guys? We still have plenty of time. Don't be shy. What are your fears? My other fear is security. Two fears: getting huge bill. Second one, getting my data out, because it's different. Before I had fortresses, like the middle age, firewalls of the company, and you're safe inside. Now anybody can break into your house, kind of. So, any volunteers to take on security topic? No? Okay. Why so quiet? Any other questions? Or I should go for Raffle?
I think everybody is multitasking and just going through the blog and opening 5 tabs.
I think security, one can add the cloud has firewall, then your server level firewall, as well as reverse proxy. And there are a lot of things at different layers. You need to enable all the securities that you can. And authentication, multi-factor, because any weak step in the chain can undo all the other securities also. So one should not think that we did 2 things and the rest of the 5 things are not important. All the layers and steps in the security, one should do all of them.
Yeah. But it's easier said than done. Like it's still public cloud. Everything's an API. So
yes.
Especially serverless. So anyway, so what other topics?
Like one thing I can ask, what do you guys do if you have an API in general? What do you do if to protect it secure? Like how do you do rate limiting? What checks do you have so people don't misuse it? Not people, but like bad actors don't misuse it.
You're talking about OpenID Connect or IDC, like
it could be anything. Like I don't like whatever service you're powering, whatever product you're powering, and if you have a backend service, and it could be serverless, it could be with the server, but ideally you would be protecting the API and right. And how do you protect the API? There's no way to protect the API. You have to just.
It has to be industry standard. It has to be something not made here, because we all make glitches. So it has to be mature. So far, my personal pick would be OIDC. But that's kind of calling REST services, and then that ties into multi-cloud topic. For me, multi-cloud is not using 2 clouds. For me, multi-cloud is like me using on-prem stuff and the cloud, like hybrid cloud, because it's disillusional to be able to use multiple clouds correctly. Plus, there is no need. Like I would encourage everybody to watch Adrian Cockcroft's talk from Reinvent. I can post them later, because it's much easier to leave the vendor now. It's like dating. It's not like marriage. So by the time you decide to leave them, you can rewrite your solution for another cloud. The problem is moving data, but the serverless is not.
Okay,
that's my feeling.
I have one more question and observation, that if I build a private cloud in my premise server and I pay for my own bandwidth network, egress and ingress, and the cost within probably $50,000 to $60,000 one-time cost, and a lower annual cost, I can probably service these things by using an enterprise class server myself. Only thing is I have to build the whole middleware and the CentOS server myself and add a reverse proxy and choose the network secure router. Like I created once for a telemedicine service, and we used what is it called? A firewall VPN router, and we were able to make it fully secure. So from this cost, where you got the bill of 72,000, it seems that option can save a lot of costs for certain size of operations.
You're right, but then Sushil, the things you just said, and I'm hearing you completely because I've gone through each one of those topics myself. You are not counting in the number of hours you're putting in. So if the capability you have, Sushil, and the amount of time you will be putting into setting this up, so you're just telling me the cost of the equipment, but what is the hourly cost of hiring Sushil to do this? And if you think in the US, for example, most for somebody to be able to do this very well, they'll be really knowledgeable. They'll have many years of experience.
Yeah, you probably need 2 or 3 people of 100K per annum.
Exactly, that's where I'm coming. So that's like already 250K or 200K, and then also you're not very sure because a lot of things need to be done. So you already mentioned like reverse, like IP protection, API limitation, and then there's another problem which is latency. How are you going to solve, like if you serve the server in say the US or Toronto, for example, and the user is in China, what is the latency going to be? The latency would definitely be a lot more than what it would be for like North American region, right? So
actually, the latency depends more on the end user's last mile network. This is what we discovered. We used to serve, but our server is in Texas, and we are serving the hospitals in eastern India, Orissa and all. So we have to look for places where they have good last mile network. If the last mile network has 2 Mbps or more of the service, then our service was working.
That's interesting to know. I did not know this for a fact. But like what I'm trying to say is that you like just to host something requires 2 people. Whereas if you're building an application and you're just one person, and that includes designing, that includes the idea, that includes the administration, and on top of that, like is the actual hosting. So if it makes sense, if you are knowledgeable, I know there's this game. It's slipping my mind. There's this amazing game on iOS which was published a few years back. And it's like a snake. It's a modern snake, multiplayer snake game. And my friend was hooked onto it, and that game just went viral. Okay, this is on iOS, and this app it was an app on Android and iOS, and this person was doing everything on his own. Okay, so he didn't pay AWS or GCP. He had servers, and he actually lived with his mom, his family. He was a young kid. He was in college, and in his own room, he put in like 15 servers, and every day he was like putting in more servers because the game just exploded. So it is definitely possible, but what percentage of people can do it, and also depends whether the app will even take, like, say in this case you're powering hospitals, so you know that there's a definite need. But what if you're building something that you're not sure needs a lot of things, right? You don't know, maybe there'll be 10 users. When I was building Announce, I wrote the V1, and it was purely JS. I decided to write a complete app on pure vanilla JS, HTML, and Python as a backend, right? So I wrote the full stack application on my own. And my initial thought was like, I just want to see if people would even use it and would like it. So when you're coming from that mindset, serving is probably the end. You just want something so people can try. And if I can do it within 1 week, 10 days, 15 days, that's the best. So the V1 I wrote for Announce with limited knowledge of deploying, hosting, and all of that. It took me around 30 days to write like the first V1. And at that time, my coding skills were a little rusty. So it's still a faster turnaround time, right? And even like HTTPS, for example, like if you have to buy your own certification, you should know all of that, right? So to get SSL.
Right.
But these cloud providers, they do things at scale, so they gave it out of the box. You don't even have to do it. Post it on.
But the thing is, for certain things, we needed the latest library released of many of the libraries. We would upgrade to the latest within 24 hours.
Yes.
And that was not possible in the public clouds. Because they have to standardize millions of instances on a common version of their libraries.
That is also
they cannot sometimes they cannot get the latest one at the.
But then again, she is occupied all the time, right? Or somebody who knows a lot about like the newest versions and then the compatibility and all of them. But in this case, I'm
of ours, maybe 20 libraries. So
yeah.
So hell, we are in the cloud native group. We're already in the cloud, so you're preaching to the wrong group.
Yeah, it's like I just want to say thank you for all of you. Like I don't know what you're building, what application, who you're serving, but whatever you're doing is pretty complicated. And just try explaining this to somebody who's completely out of computer world, and they will just be like, it just goes on top of the head.
So I was, what I was trying to drive at is that there is a certain class of people who will benefit from having a premise server because of a set of conditions.
Yes.
And probably we can build a consulting service for if we can identify that group.
That is true for sure.
So
hybrid connectivity. How
does can combine and do that?
I believe there are already companies. I guess, Sushil, you run a company like this, or what is the background?
No, I'm a independent consultant.
I see. Okay.
I'm going to incorporate soon for such things, innovation projects.
Yes, but there's a consultancy opportunity there.
I will ask you to fill the survey because there was 50 people at one point in the call. There is only 13 who filled it. You don't have to go through all the questions. It was just to give the name so that we can do the Manning raffle. And I keep posting the link again because if you join late in the meetup, you don't see it from the beginning. And then what else?
Yeah, I already filled.
Yeah. Any other questions while I'll start collecting names for the draw of the book? Jonathan, do you have anything that comes to mind? Mike, like any other horror stories from other clouds?
Another time when the bars are open again, maybe. Sudeep, that was a great talk, man. Thank you for being so candid about everything, and your approach to it was very impressive as well. I can't comment for some reason, so I just wanted to tell you that. Daniel, I got to duck out at 7:30, but thanks for hosting as always, and have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. And if you have startups, make sure to reach to Mike. He's going to help you make your dreams a reality through Amazon.
There's only two Mike Aptas in the world, and one's a award-winning filmmaker, and the other one's me. So I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. So look me up.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, you keep talking while I keep. Okay, we have 50 names now in the chat. Any different classes? And let's see who's going to win this.
The book. What is the book again, Daniel? I'm going to fill it as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you do that. And then responses. I'm creating spreadsheet out of it. I had too many questions, so it's hard to read. Okay. 17 people so far. And then let's share the screen. On screen 2. And then we're going to go to...
By the way, I can take this time. If I'm assuming most of you have checked out Announced today. If you have ideas, if you find something that's not working well, if you have suggestions, please do message me. Also, if you think that the product is not great, that is also a valuable suggestion. I would appreciate something like this as well. If you think that the idea isn't good.
Sorry. While you're talking about, can you repeat? Can you tell us more about your startup? You have a couple products. You were so shy about that. So talk about that while I do the names.
So I can share one thing. So why I actually tried a couple of products. I tried a couple of things rapidly. I even tried to create YouTube videos. I'll post a blog post about it. It was very interesting. I created a lot of YouTube videos through an algorithm. And I thought that maybe I'll just generate revenue out of it. So I quit my job and I said, what can I do in a really immediate environment? And if you think of it, it's essentially just serverless YouTube, right? So you don't pay for any video hosting or anything like that. So I did a couple of things, and then I realized after my friend's car got towed away, And I just connected the dots and all the times that I've wondered that, like, what's happening in a given area. So you can, Google Maps shows where the particular location. You want to know, is it this restaurant? You can always find it. But if you want to know what's happening at that restaurant, is it happy hours, or is it somebody's performing there, or maybe they have some specials? That thing is just not available right now in the market. Nobody's doing this. And this is when this idea for Announce came, and I started working on it. The interesting part is that you can essentially follow an area or follow a particular location. So say you live in an apartment complex. So you can follow that location, and if in the future any announcement is made over there in that particular area, you'll be notified. So imagine if I'm traveling and I left my car in a parking lot, I can just follow that area. It is futuristic because there have to be a lot of users on the platform. But if they're assuming there are, and somebody says this parking lot is closed, or there's some alerts, somebody can just say something and I'll just know. Or oftentimes this happens, like you're going by a property and you're like, where do I park here? Right? And they would have a big poster, or in a national park, and they're giving away like big sheets and big papers, like these are the people, these are the animals you need to take care of, or this is what you should be aware of. You can always do a Google search and go to their website, and there's 50 clicks in, you can just create an announcement.
So maybe it's garage sales or something like, or
it's garage sale. It could be anything. Events makes is the easiest, and so Announce is completely it's web first. So I understand search very well, and we made it search optimized. So the long-term vision is that if somebody loses something on a train station, you don't have to go to Announce. You can just search on Google. So Announce is like, if you're at a railway station, you lose a bag, you can just search on Google, like, I lost a bag, and somebody has created an announcement, and you'll just find it on Google search. You don't have to download the app.
That's brilliant. So you would feed back as the news to Google, and
exactly. So it's already happening, and we've done.
That's awesome. How are you going to monetize that? Like, I like that one.
I was about to ask the same question. Is it Google Ads that you're plugged into?
So we have actually no monetization, and the way we've made it is that the cost for all of this serving is as low as possible. In an ideal world, we could advertise, we could have promoted events, we could have a lot of those things in the future. But right now, we're just going for like a good user experience, and if people use it, if there's value. Right? WhatsApp still doesn't have a solid monetization, but billion plus people use it. Some love it.
You need Facebook to buy you.
Yeah, but there are ways to monetize it. Like if you think of it, like Google Ads has 20% of their revenue is from small businesses. So if you are in a particular place, you want to know what to do here. If you're traveling, you want to know what to do here, right? And people are advertising on Google because that's the only place. But those bits are very expensive, and Announce can be like really free, like cheap way. So we could monetize it if we reach a certain number of users.
Maybe you can partner with companies like Eventbrite or Meetup.
Yeah, Meetup.
Get the feed coming to you to aggregate, or some news partners with ads. Like, try to do B2B development. I don't know. I'm just trying to help you because I appreciate what you did for us.
Yeah. Where's your current usage base geography concentrated? Is it mostly the Bay Area that you have events being posted?
So right now what we've done, so what I did was I eventually ended up, a lot of people actually said that they like the product, it's very nice, but there's just no content. So then I decided that what can we do? And one idea that had been on my mind was like, we could also work like a news aggregator. So say you want to learn about what's happening in the area, you just go there. If there are no announcements, there's some news, some hyperlocal news. So right now we have, we act as similar to Google News. And for this, again, it's built on top of serverless, so because we're over here. And it's completely independent microservice that I wrote. It's serving 60,000 cities across the world. So we get traffic from everywhere, but the majority of it is North America. So it's US, close to 82%, and 8% or so is like from other English-speaking countries.
I have a short message just for Suhail. So you see, you keep advertising on-prem development, but if he did it on-prem, he wouldn't have time to do business development. So he's now a business owner trying to monetize what he built. That's what serverless help. That's the agility for his business. Like, yes, we are good cooks, but I don't want to spend my time in the kitchen or in the garage being that mechanic.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I think the only rationale for rolling your own is some kind of compliance requirement. You know, where data patriation is a compliance requirement, and you have to build your own. But I can't imagine standing up my own stuff, and patching it, and doing stuff like that.
But very often, like, because we talk big companies, they are just tribal knowledge and belief. Nobody wants to dare to change status quo. So if you ask the right questions, that can be changed as well.
Sure.
Like, cloud is safer than half of the data centers. It's just kind of, people are disillusional. Whether, like, some of them think if it's in the cloud, it's going to be completely safe, or if it's not in the cloud, it's going to be completely safe. But truth is somewhere in between. 50 shades of gray, how they call it, shared responsibility. I think that was the buzzword.
Yeah, the detail is in the engineering about all this security.
Anything else with your business? Like, we are now getting in the fun part, how to sell this, how to help you give back to you. Any ideas, guys? What do you think we can, like? We still have time, so if you want to help Sudeep with the ideas.
Yes, that would be great. If you have ideas or suggestions, please do share. And one thing that's
tell about your company. Go ahead.
So I actually, under Milky Way, I created another product, which is Point. So you can go to my company's website and to milkyway.com, and you can see there's another product, which is pointaddress.com, where we're challenging addresses, but it's difficult to gain traction over there.
What does it do? What does that product do?
What is that? Can you put it in the chat, that address?
Yeah, put the link in the chat.
Yeah, so let me send the website, which is...
And now it's resonated with me. When we first met, I did click through your products. That one has the future, but I don't think COVID is helping now that everybody is hidden in the basement like me.
Yeah, so the last one is the Point address. And the question came to me when I was like, my parents have an address, I have an address, and I keep moving, right? And the question is, who gave this address? And why do we have this particular address? And what is an address essentially? So an address is essentially nothing but like a lat long with a human recognizable word or name, right? And it began in the 16th century because the governments or the kingdoms back then, they wanted to find people. So they started giving addresses and giving names to the streets. Now today we are talking about self-driving cars, but we are, and like DoorDash giving food at your home. But all of them are like using sophisticated technology like GPS and computing times and so on. But all of them are using 16th century address system. So this system is very, very old and it has gradually developed. So we are all assuming that addresses are immutable. They're just source of truth, but it's not. But
can you give a demo? Can you give a demo of that? I'll draw the name now and you take the screen and share, because I did not understand how to use it. When we
I will present.
Let me just see who the winner is. So it's recorded. We have witnesses here. I think I have all 23 names inside. Yes, Angie came last. So good luck to everybody. And so you will be able to go to manning.com website and choose anything you want. The only thing, ta-da! Michelle, are you here? Michael, Michelle, are you here? If you're not here, we're going to go again. I have to see you.
I'm here.
Hello?
I'm here.
Okay, perfect. If you can put your email address, the one you use for manning.com when buying books, in the chat, I will be able to reach you and connect you with Manning folks. They're going to give you anything you want to learn.
Okay.
Anything really. So I'm going to see. Congrats, Michelle. So let's stop sharing, and then you explain us the product. Like, I'm intrigued.
So I'm presenting now. I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so like right now, most people use Google Maps. Now, imagine if you have a particular location for your address, and if you want to update the location or update the address of that, you have to do it on Google Maps. And if somebody else is using Apple Maps, then go talk to them. So there's like Google Maps is now the authority of what is an address, right? which is weird, right? So the point of this, like, imagine let's go to Toronto. So I'm in Toronto right now, and let's pick a random spot. I don't know who lives here, but let's say this particular place. Okay, so let's say somebody lives over here, or somebody lives in this one. It's easier. So let's just say somebody lives over here and they want to get delivery over here. So somebody's on. So this somebody lives here and they want to say, Sudeep, come meet me. So they'll say blah blah blah, College Street, something something, right? Instead, they could just say, so Daniel, say Daniel lives here. Daniel meet, and it can be Canada or Canada, and you can call it. You can name this. This address can be protected or it can be private, or it can be public, so anybody can find you. Let's just say that it's protected, so I can access this, or I can share it. And you can take pictures, like, oh, meet me under this tree, or you can add a description that, hey, apartment number 5, meet me at the lobby.
Oh
So
my God, that's beautiful.
I can just create a point address. It's essentially an address. It just is a very, very specific as to what you want it to be, not what Google Maps wants it to be. You can upload images. You can say, meet me, this is what the block looks like now, or I'll be standing here. Or if there's a food delivery, you can share a point address and say, meet me in front of the lobby. So the person is not lost. This is a pretty well-established area. But imagine places where there's like low lighting or it's dark and people don't know which house it is because they all have poor numbering. If more than one person lives in the same place, they can have like multiple addresses. And you can essentially delete it. If you don't want it to be shared with anyone, you can just delete this and protect your legal address. You never share your legal address online, and you protect it from data theft and so on. And all the person gets is Daniel-friend.ca. And you can create multiple addresses. You can call one for yourself, one for pizza. You can call it Daniel Pizza -ca. So you're just getting pizza order, or you're getting like food delivery, right? Whatever. And this is how a point looks like. And I'll just quickly sign in.
So this is human readable GPS, like, so, because you cannot memorize those coordinates.
So right now you can specify it to be any location. So I just did it in Toronto. I'm not even there. There's no picture, so we just put a thing. But this is essentially the point. This is the point address. Now, if somebody wanted to find me, they can just do this, or eventually they can just do Google search. Now, because this is going to Mexico, where I am right now, that's why. Otherwise, I'll just come here. And I know exactly where it is. I can zoom out. I can do anything, whatever I want to. So it's, think of it like, instead of calling your home 55 apartment 112 Citizen Street, behind this and that, and you can just call your home whatever you want. You can call it Daniel-ca, right? Or Daniel Food Delivery. Then you can delete it. You can update it. You can tomorrow you move. I don't have to remember it. You just reposition it, and Daniel moves to this one, and you just update the point. And now this is your point address. So I always.
Yeah, this is.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I don't know if anybody remember. There's a old thing called Wikimapia, and this is like a very cool and better version of that. Like where you could like find out your house on a map and point an address to it, and obviously you're adding so much metadata to it that I mean. Yeah.
Right.
Can you post the link, Nihal, in the chat so he can explore and compare marketings?
Yes.
The only thing that came to mind, but it's not the use case. When I was fishing, when I was younger, we would GPS locate the coordinates where the fish is, where the spots are. But that's on the water, like that's different. So it's.
There's another thing is like some businesses can never be on Google Maps. For example, if there's a tacos truck stand, right, and the truck stand is on moving. Today they are here, and tomorrow they're over there, right? So if they constantly move, how will Google Maps ever know that what is their location? They can provide a service area, something like this. But point gives them more like mobility. Today they can just, I never have to remember. I just say taco-stand-Canada.ca, and I can just find them wherever they are. If they're on the Gabriel Street or they are. It doesn't have to be legal. Google Maps also requires for businesses to have, they send them a postcard. And they should be in the place to receive the postcard to show that it's a legit business establishment. In this case, it is not required. It's completely democratized address, and you can set up wherever. It doesn't matter if you're selling tacos or you're like just meeting friends. You can do anything and just share it publicly. And as you pointed out, that you can add as much metadata as you want. You can take your own photos, like meet me under this tree, but there are like 50 trees, and they're like, if you've ever gone in a public meetup in a public place, and there's so many meetups happening, and then you're like, which one is it? But you'll know, like, these are the, like, come here. And there's more things to build under it, but it's just, I feel that it's difficult to boot, because to start using it, it's easy for one person to use, but for many people to use, the question comes like questioning addresses, and nobody has ever questioned addresses. Tech companies, they just assume addresses are like state-of-the-art, immutable truth. But that's not the case.
You're such a creative mind, and we are honored to know you. Thank you for coming. This is beyond serverless.
Is there a public API to translate the known public places into lat long if you need to? Like, let's say, for example, I have an app like Waze. Let's say, you know, it's the one in your car that tells you how to get there, the Waze app, right? If I had an app like that, would I be able to allow my users to type in the name of the point, and then I could just xlat that to lat long?
Exactly. So let me just call it Daniel CA, and I will just show it to you. I'm going to create a public point, okay, and I hope this works. So the public point means it's for businesses, and in Explore section it will show up. So this question definitely came to my mind, like how is food delivery going to, or Lyft going to integrate? And that took me to the third product, which is Maya REST. So Maya is essentially some APIs that we create. So I created our own API platform, and what it does is you can basically go here and just test it out. So this is the geopoint you'll get, whatever location it is. We have 1,000 free. It's like basically free. It's very, very low. So let me just search for daniel.ca, and there you go. So you have it. So this is the functioning API. So Maya is another product I built, which is an API platform, but it does this. And getting, like, you don't have to sign up for credit card or anything, because the way I've made it is it just scales. Just sign in, create a key, and you're good to go.
Where do you host Maya? Is it Amazon or Google?
Oh, I'm a GCP fan. I'm just.
This is API gateway in my head, like as I see throttling and APIs.
So you need to to build this, because I had done so many other things. I understood that how can I make an API platform? So you can really create the API, and the link is there in point address as well.
So what do you use to throttle plans? Like, I'm curious about design behind that one. How do you throttle 1,000 users, premium user, or corporate user?
So how you would do that is, like, you would. Now I'm thinking like GCP. Right? I'm like providing an API service, and I had to build this platform for Announce, because everything started with Announce, because it's a complicated product. So the question that comes at this point is how do you estimate the cost of one API call? And if you can estimate the cost of one API call and how much you're paying, on top of that, you can say this much is free and this is the cost of one API call. And if you think of architecture very deeply, like very carefully, and you design it based on tools that are scalable, you will realize that you can put the cost to be really low. So just to share an example, the cost of point address is 1/100th of what Google Maps cost, or at least 1/10th. So it's a fraction of what Google Maps cost for reverse geocoding. So I went through Google Maps and we used reverse geocoding. And it's so much more expensive. But if I were to show you the pricing for point address, it's where can I show you over here? 1 point API cost, like for 10,000 you'll pay $5. In Google Maps it is for 1,000 you pay $7. So it's like divided by 10. It's like 1/10 of Google Maps costs. So now I can estimate what Google Maps cost and how much their profit is, right? Because I know this is how much it costs. So this cost is essentially what is costing us to deploy it. There's absolutely no fee or no income that we're generating through this. This is essentially just what it would cost to do this. If you did it on your own, you cannot do cheaper than this, like most other things.
Unbelievable. I wish you all the best. Like, I hope one of these businesses is going to succeed. They say 1 in 10. You need 7 more.
I've actually tried a couple of other things as well. Maybe I'll write about those things. So the link to Point API is right here. description. And this is really cool feature, which is like having like you can just move the map around. This is basically rebuilding Google Maps of having all those places. And when you move here, you just find whatever it is. And in the long term, we can have like food services, catering, and you have full control over your point, not Google Maps. Like on the day you can delete a photo. On the day you can you can change the position, you can change everything. So if you're a local business or if you are living somewhere, you are in control of your address, not Amazon. Like Amazon is so good, not like some new food delivery startup who would have their data hacked in matter of days when they forget to pay their GCP bills, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is again cool, and I mean, I just pointed to the Wikimedia link, but I can think of a cross between the point address thing and the announce, and I'm pretty sure you've thought of this, but like a cross between whatever's on on point showing up in an announce automatically, and like a sort of an augmented reality kind of way, where if you're walking across a certain food truck and that food truck is already established, has set up its address on point, it shows up on announce automatically if you're subscribed to that. So
yeah,
push notification or whatever.
Yeah, also like announce has like an address thing. So I'm like, why? And we are paying Google for that, for reverse geocoding. And so I'm like, why should we even pay them? We can just like reverse geocode point. But the key to a consumer product always goes down to attraction and usage. So when I created announce, it was just me and none of my friends are interested in, like, they're all smart, but they're just like in different phase of life. So my goal is like to convince people who I don't know that they should like my product and they should understand it. So since December, like as of today, we get around 10,000 hits on announce. So on a monthly basis, we're close to 130, 40, and then it's increasing every day. And people in random places are discovering announce and they're just creating posts about, like somebody's hosting, for example, there's a zoo in Philadelphia and they're reopening. Okay, they've been closed for very long because of COVID, and now they're reopening. And announce automatically created a post. They found the algorithm found something, and they reached out to me and said, "Thank you for promoting this." And there's like individuals posting like do-yourself crafts or some event somewhere, and they're discovering it, or they're hosting some event and they're doing it. They're discovering it on their own. Like I have zero marketing budget. So today, like once we have like more users and people find it, we can make it even better and take it from there. Yes, go ahead, Sushil.
Hi, Sudeep. Thanks for all the great things. Now, my question is about, are there channels? Can you create a topic-wise channel in this announce? Or like, for example, somebody is interested in, they want to give away a pet, right? And it's hard to find a good home. There's no money being transacted. Somebody wants to receive something. So
right now there's a limited functionality.
It may become more efficient also, and your traffic will also reduce. Unneeded information will not go to unneeded places.
Yeah, that's true. So how announce works is essentially you have to be in that area. So say if I am here, wherever I am, if there's no content there, I will not have any information. So it's completely information based. So right now in Mexico, and almost everything is around cruises, because a lot of cruises used to come here and now they've stopped. So it's like Mexico, and but it's very specific to the area I'm in. But if I move to say Palo Alto, right, the information will be specific to Palo Alto and the area. So or if I go to Stanford, it'll be specific to Stanford. And so on. The more you zoom in,
I meant after location, the second level of filtering or
it's over here. So we thought of like some things in the beginning. So there are like some categories, you can call them channels. So I can say I only care about local news. If I press that, I only see local news. Or if I say I want to see only event safety, so I only have safety. There's no safety announcement here, so there's nothing. You can just skip all the stuff. You can also say, oh, I only want to know something that's expiring this week. And so this is cool that because we have two filters now. We can say like by users. So now I have three filters. So you can like filter these things out, and eventually we'll make the product even nicer so it remembers what.
Yeah, I guess when applications use it, those applications can create their own categories.
Exactly, yeah. So right now we are stuck to like these 5, but the way architecture is that we can expand to any number of categories eventually if it all depends on if we can like get that sort of traction there where people are creating announcements and consuming them and using it. Everything is heavily search optimized. So if you post anything over here, it just goes directly to Google and starts indexing. So if there's something unique, you don't have to create a blog post or post it somewhere. It's not gated behind anything. People will just find it.
Sudeep, you mentioned the Android app and iOS app, but Firebase is supposed to be PWA, like progressive web app. Do you need an app? Why did you create the app, or it's just the same?
It again comes back to architecture. So to build anything, you have to know what all am I using. So say if I'm making an application, I need to use say some place to host the data. I need to egress, ingress, all of this. But Announce is heavily map focused, right? So per load, I'm paying Google Maps a certain fee. So if say 100,000 users come on my product, it will cost me 100,000 map loads and have to pay Google Maps for that. So it's again tied to architecture and understanding what could be the costs. So the way the web application is, like it looks okay. I mean, it looks great. But there's a lot of engineering behind the scenes because if you notice over here, the map doesn't load at the same time, many times. So say when I'm here and I go to location or I go to saved, or even if I go to profile and so on, the map stays the same, it's static. Right? So it's heavily optimized to get the best out of Google Maps, and also like download speed. So imagine if you clicked on some button and the map reloaded, and if you're on 3G, it'll take forever. So because of this, Maps, like there's also a free version, which is OpenStreet, but we can host it, but it doesn't look as pretty and as nice as Google Maps. But however, Google Maps is free on apps, right? So the one fear in my mind was that, okay, there's 1% or maybe 0.1% possibility that the app just blows up. Say some celebrity posts one announcement and there are like 1 million people on the application. I'll have to basically shut down the app because the cost of just serving this would be so high, I can't afford it, right? So we'll just go bankrupt again, and it'll be $72K bill post again. So even that point, we're 1% chance. So the Maps is free on iOS and Android, and we are in much more control. Over here, if you see, there are a lot of things happening, and if you're on a slow network, it can be really bad. So we've optimized it, but there's nothing native, right? So it has to load the maps every time, and it has to load like the CSS. But in mobile apps, it's just there. So we created like mobile apps, which is both on iOS and Android. Android one is the least updated, and iOS is the second most updated, and web is the most, because we test here, iterate here, everything. And we just have, like, you can just download the app and then you can just see wherever you are. The other thing is, like, if you're, say, traveling and you're at home and now you went to office and there's some announcements and you want to be notified of safety announcements only, you don't care about news, for example. We need to know your location for that, right? And it's just easier to, like, for users to give even approximate, we don't need like a very exact location. We need a mobile app because mobiles have more infrastructure around it. Websites don't. They just don't. So eventually our goal would be to get like mobile users move on to mobile apps, and the desktop users can continue to use the desktop apps.
Wow, that was awesome answer. And did you have to develop it twice for 2 platforms, or use something like Ionic for cross-platform?
So actually everything is native, and that again ties down to architecture, and I can speak, like, give another lecture on just how to do architectures. So when you think of Android and iOS applications, there are a lot of unified cross-platform apps, like languages like Ionic or Flutter. Flutter is by far my favorite if you are creating something cross-platform. The problem is when you're using Flutter, it's essentially, or any of these, you're essentially creating a web application and hosting the web application in a wrapper inside these inside Android and iOS environments. The interesting thing to note there is that how do these compilers understand your wrapped up application? They understand it by thinking that this application is a web application. So if you were to make a Maps-centric web application which is cross-platform, Google Maps will still think you're a web application and charge you still. So it defeats the purpose of us having to save money on Google Maps, right? So we have to be native. So our Android is native, it's in Java. I wrote a major part of the code, and then I hired somebody else to help me. And iOS is Swift, and that's because I'm very familiar with Swift.
That's awesome.
So
I will bookmark this video for anybody doing mobile development. Perfect objection handling.
It's like so difficult because at some point, at the same time, I'm coding for the front end, right? Which is say some some like framework. I have a backend service which is in a different language. I'm writing iOS. I'm writing like Android a little bit, or at least I have like I'm solving bugs there and making progress. And I'm writing like a lot of serverless functions like to optimize and power the data. And then there's a design question, and my friends will tap the button and they'll say, "Oh, this doesn't work. Your app is crap." And I say, "It's not crap. It's just I just don't have resources." And then on top of that, it's like the hosting and cloud, and so it's like probably the last thing on the plate. And that is why in the beginning I was just like, "Let me just host it on GAE. It'll take me 30 minutes or maybe an hour, and I can just see what happens after that." But it actually backfired. And because of that, I ended up spending so much time in educating myself in security, in architectures. The V1 of the app was actually a MVP, the one that I wrote, and we had to scrap it. It was based on vanilla JS, and it was on every session, it would reload the whole website. If you've ever used Map My Run, even Yelp, if you look at Yelp, like our infrastructure is, like our design is much better than even Yelp's. Because on Yelp, every time you do something, the whole site reloads. And on Yelp's side, they're reloading the map. So it's not really a good thing for them as a company. They're probably paying a lot to Google.
I'm sure Harold will be able to use your services as a consultant because he's in real estate business and probably mapping is important.
Yes, we are big consumers of Google Maps, no doubt about it.
That's cool. This is really awesome. Feels like a real meetup. We did not even know we're going to get here. I'm really having fun, and so I don't have to read yet.
I agree. Architecture is pretty like important to think. So sometimes people ask, "What do you do?" And I sometimes say, "Oh, I spend a lot of time just designing things, and like whether it be UI or whether it be like the backend and how things will interact." And I once drew like the graphs of, because it's a content platform, I also need an administration, right? Because somebody could just post hateful content, and all of a sudden Google just bans us, or things like that. Or like if somebody comes in, my friends are like usually the ones who would mess up the most, and they will always do the wrong thing because they're engineers and they want to break things.
So you developed CMS as a backend to feed approval of these posts, or you use something out of the box? Like what did you do with those posts? Content editing, content approval.
So there's a couple of Satyaram. Mute. Sorry about this. So there's a couple of things that we've done, and it's like a big mix. So for example, we also need images, right? So if you upload nude images, and Google search will automatically categorize as an adult site, and there you go. No, the dream of like somebody finding things lost in a railway station is gone forever. So for this kind of a thing, we've used Vision, and there are APIs like Cloud Vision, but then there's a chance that a lot of people start using it, and then Google Cloud Vision will get super expensive. So we have an in-house solution, we also have an out-house solution. So for a limited number, if I only have like 100 users, I don't really care to like deploy my own in-house because it's not as good as Google Clouds. But if I have like 1 million users, then I will say, okay, I need to bring down the cost and I'll use something in-house. But it doesn't have the 99% accuracy. It only has 92% accuracy. So everything is a big mix and very well thought out that if this happens, what should I do? And if that happens,
it's just image approval. You're doing a moderation of images, not the text itself.
No, and then there's a text as well. So as an example, I can live demo this as well. So there's also a text moderation. So for example, if I go here and I write something like sex, porn, right? And if I try to post this, it should stop me, right? So it found offensive language in my announcement. Interestingly, there's this person in Hungary. She wanted to promote her thing. And it just so happened that the name of their product, of their brand, has the word bimbo in it. I don't know what it means in Hungarian, but I think it's fine because it's for a party celebration, like something adult. But she reached out to me and said that she cannot make an announcement because it just keeps saying that adult offensive content found, because bimbo is tagged as a bad word. And we've trained our model, our AI model, to this is in-house, like on a bunch of like words. We're using natural language processing, and we trained it on a set of words, and that word has bimbo, so it has a high weightage. It will just be declined, and so like these are the interesting things that we have to build. And then comes the realm of AI. That what is possible? Should we train our own models? Should we reuse models? How is deploying them? Deploying AI models is also difficult. It's not straightforward.
You know, I'm thinking now you need a better architectural diagram that captures all these components. There is so much more to what you blogged online when we got to know one another.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Is that too much to ask? Like, it's another blog post. For now, just share the diagram. I'll share it with the group eventually in one email.
I have to draw it. I drew it like long time back. I can share it, but it's complicated. The problem with sharing architecture globally is publicly is a security flaw, right? So the moment you start connecting the dots, then for example, if you ask me, Google marked an account as spam. I can actually reverse engineer that and say what are the things that Google could do, what are the signals they could do. So the moment they share their architecture, then I have like 10 times more insight into it. I'm no longer reverse engineering it. So it has both pros and cons of sharing architecture online. Because I understand that, for example, our product has, I can share this limitation, that if you upload an adult image, it will be taken down, but there's a lag. So there was like a plus and minus. I could do it on the go. I could process your image on the go, but there's a delay in that, 5 seconds. Or I can say, I allow you to post it, but after you posted it, then I evaluate whether your image is result or not. So I went for the second one because it's more real time. As a user, I post something, I want to see it posted, right? If you are on Facebook, imagine you posted something and Facebook says, wait for 10 seconds for it to go live. It just doesn't work. So there's a delay of like 2 to 3 seconds and maybe 4 seconds, depending on how big the image is. And if there's adult content, the image is taken down immediately. So this is like a thing. If somebody wanted to misuse this, they could, and if they figure out the whole API that we have, they could essentially outrun all the instances with like some berserk announcements with all adult content. And if Google is scraping our site, they'll just pick up on it. So this is like, these are the kind of things that we have to think, like when you're architecting things, you have to keep in mind that what all can go wrong. And there's just some things that we have to deal with it. Like there's no way around it. That's a limitation, right? Another thing is like if Google Maps, Google scrapes on my site. So our announce currently has more than 1 million posts as of now. And it's constantly growing. More announcements are there. But what if Google starts scraping us more often because people are like updating it? So we need to tell Google to only scrape these things which are new. And then comes the search engine optimization part. And then the whole realm of like, how do you make it easier for Google to scrape? How do you do it so the users are not affected, right? How does the system handle spikes that are by Google, and so on and so forth?
Amazing. You have to go, Harold.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other final questions? We are overnight. This is like a real meetup. So
thank you. That was really, really great.
Thank you.
That's an impressive level of engineering that you've done. Like you just spoke in the last 10 minutes or so. So that itself is great. Yeah. I mean, you spoke about traction. I mean, I could think of something like Pokemon Go, which had its own traction. Like, I mean, Announce essentially is a more sober version of Pokemon Go, if I can say it that way. But yeah, I mean that. Yeah. If you can get something of that sort on your platform, it just would it become viral. And I mean the traction part.
So for me personally, because I don't have a big team, I only have like some part-time engineers, and I'm devoted to this 100%. For me, a spike is bad. So actually, I can share. On Good Friday, we had over 10,000 people because I think it was holiday. People are just sitting home and just exploring. There were more than 10,000 people around. announced, or it looked like it could go even up to 15,000. And I was a little afraid, to be honest. Like most companies would be happy that their product is just taking off. And I'm just worried that I don't want it to be like an overnight success. It's okay if you get there in 3 months or 6 months. But if it's an overnight, then that's just me waking up all night. So there's some ideas around as well. And I would love to hear whatever you have, like if you have some ideas. But I'm happy with like the current growth. And we don't have any like engagement features. So if you post anything, I cannot say anything. So over this weekend, we launched votes, so you can upvote and downvote, and the algorithm will like move the announcements up and down based on how good they are. And
yeah, I had a sorry, I had a follow-up question to that. So because you mentioned spike, like if there is a denial of service attack to your service, like is it like it's under your purview to handle it, or is it under Google's purview to
it's actually
notify?
It's both. So then it's again another deep level of conversation where we can go on what all can go wrong at the time of denials of DDoS attack. And it doesn't have to be like malicious. It could just be like some Chinese startup is making a search engine and they're just scraping every site, right? It doesn't have to be Google. It could be anyone. It could be myself doing something else. So there are many reasons to do this, to solve this problem. And if you go through like some popular CDNs, they have like the most popular CDN, I'm just forgetting the name. They have a lot of DDoS attacks in place, and Google does too, but they don't have as many. So Google will do a lot of IP cleaning. So this is where they will come in because we are using GCP service. But once they've cleaned the IPs, what is happening with those IPs is probably on us. And that's when the question of API comes in, because there's simply no way to protect APIs. I've read every piece of literature on this. There's just no way to, unless you guard it behind sign-in, the product. If the product is publicly available, there's simply no way. And if somebody was very committed, they could definitely reverse engineer Instagram's API and basically get all their data. And that's why there's so many sites that have like data on top of these companies, even though on browser you cannot. So then the question comes on API limiting and so on. So to directly answer your question, it's both. Some things would do or Azure would do, but the other things are just completely on you. Because you asked me this and I found it very fascinating, was DigitalOcean. So the one that I mentioned in the beginning was about DigitalOcean like storage, but there's a caveat there. They allow it only in native environments. So you have to host everything in, like you have to do, like even install things on your own. So they'll just give you a machine. What happens in this case is if you're not very careful with protecting and passwords and like there's some words, IP blocking and all of that, you could still end up getting charged more than GCP simply because you didn't protect the system they gave you, because they're just giving you a server, like a machine, right? So in DigitalOcean, that's like a thing that I would be worried, and in GCP, I think they take care of a lot of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you then use a Cloudflare or something like that in front of your network?
Yeah, so if you're using something like exactly Cloudflare, I would highly recommend using Cloudflare simply because of the DDoS protection and other things are fine. In my case, we are not using Cloudflare, but we could if we have a lot of usage. And these companies like even GCP and Firebase is essentially using Fastly. So if you know, there's a company called Fastly, and that company just provides, even GitHub uses Fastly. It's like GitHub doesn't have its own CDN. It uses a third company, which is called Fastly. So all these companies essentially are like cross-using their benefits, and cloud in that case helps. So somebody pointed out that legal part is complicated in hosting your own thing. And I think the other part is security. And Google has the power to have 10,000 incredibly smart engineers. And if I can just piggyback on that and do everything on my own, that's awesome. It's like superpower given to me.
Yeah, fair point.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you everyone for joining and listening to me, and Daniel for inviting me. I never imagined that I'll be giving a talk on cloud, but here I am. life of a startup is just that you have to know like every part of it, and you can basically wake me up in the middle of the night and ask me about anything from design to like how to use the contracts, and it's just that how it is.
But that's exactly what we love about you. Like I call it for myself, split personality. One foot is in IT, the other foot is in a business. And we love these stories of building startups succeeding. That's why we became friends with Mike, who is running startup program with Amazon, and now with you. So feel free to come back, please share and tell us how we can help you back. Like everything was so awesome.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Go ahead.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
This is a great meetup.
See you later, Sudeep. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.